Georgia lawyers Bob and Irreverent D talk law. Listen up for stories about how things really happen in our legal system. Who are these guys? Dwayne Singleton, Irreverent D, is a criminal defense attorney in the state of Georgia. Benjamin O. Benson, aka Bob, is a personal injury attorney in Atlanta. On today's episode, Bob gets clever.
It's little round things.
Yeah, a little monocle.
A monocle. Maybe I should get a monocle.
Monocle Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they both make things really exciting.
Right. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Now, sit back and take a listen as Bob and Irreverent D talk law.
Welcome to the Bob and Irreverent D Talk Law podcast. It's us.
This is Bob, and F you, I'm Irreverent D. I'm just kidding.
Irreverent D stands for Dwayne.
That's right.
Dwayne Singleton of the Dwayne Singleton Trial Law Group. Trial lawyers.
Yours is much better, though. Bob Law, even though it's Ben, right?
Right, it's Benjamin O. Benson.
So easy to remember. Bob Law, boblaw.com.
Right.
Look you up, you're like, got in a bad wreck. You're like, oh, what was that lawyer's name?
Yeah, it's Bob Law Firm. Yes.
Bob Law. There
One
he
of them,
is.
just like that.
Send somebody right out to your house or whatever and sign you up. No?
No, we don't do that.
Oh, okay.
No.
Turn your wreck
Listen.
into a check.
No, we don't do that. Listen, I don't like any of that. I had a big, almost violent argument with an advertising
Almost
guy.
violent.
Almost violent. With an advertising guy who says, Ben, we need to really get your ads out there, advertising, get more clients. And I'm like, no. I don't want to engage in that. I don't.
Right.
I don't. And we did do some general little advertisements. We put them on Facebook as a trial. And here's what we found. The kind of people that respond to the kind of advertising that are out there, it's almost like the advertising is encouraging people to think, if I get in a wreck, I will get some kind of financial, I've won the little lottery, right? And that's wrong thinking, and I won't tolerate it in any of my clients. All of my clients they got injured.
Right.
And in reality, I'm going to get them what I think is fair, but to them, it's not going to be fair because their life has been affected.
Well, in most cases, I think that people are like, if we had two doors, behind this door is some money. Behind this door, you were never in your accident and you don't have to suffer the pain that you're going through. Yeah. They would always go through the door,
if they actually had to go through
right.
The
right. Hey, I don't want to have that pain. I don't want to have that suffering. Kind of a great example is somebody's like, well, if I gave you $10 million, would you be okay with not waking up tomorrow? No,
right.
My life's definitely worth $10 million.
Can I pay you $2 million to break your leg and have you walk around on crutches for a year?
No, thank you.
No,
thank you.
I think maybe I
would like to keep my foot.
Maybe I just kind of work harder.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So we got off on that tangent.
Okay.
Let's you know what? I think it's time for. Let's talk about the news.
Let's do it.
And now, the news.
So I want to talk about Uber, and I want to talk about farmers insurance.
Okay. Driverless cars. The wave of the future.
Negative. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Ride share, everybody. Nobody.
What I
owns a
will
car.
tell you is that the driver who is driving this car
Yes.
is not the actual driver. In that sense, it was driverless. Get this. Here's what happened. This lady was driving for Uber
Right.
in the late 2000s. And Uber then says, listen, lady, we did a background check and you can't be driving for.
This is when Uber started cracking down and
started
like
cracking
making
down.
people turn in their driver history.
Yep.
Not just anybody could drive for Uber.
Right.
Right.
They started upping their game.
Yes.
Right.
We're
So
a real business now.
We're a real business now. At any rate, lady decides, no problem. I'll just reapply under a different name.
Genius.
Brilliant.
Genius.
Brilliant.
That app will never know who I really am.
What could possibly go wrong? So her name was Jane Doe.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Her name, almost slightly better. Her assumed name was Annie Molly.
Okay. Fake name.
Fake name. Maybe Annie Molly was a real person, but it was certainly not her name.
So this is not the driver of the car.
This is not the driver. So, and, excuse me, she reapplied for Uber under Annie Molly and got an Uber policy. I don't know if you know this, Dwayne, but if you're driving your car and you're using the Uber app and you're driving someone around, you are on this insurance policy.
Right.
And then when you turn the Uber app off and you're driving home, you're just under your own insurance policy. Right. So that farmer,
This I did know.
Yep.
Okay.
So that farmer's insurance policy, while you're driving under Uber, if you cause injury to other people, that farmer's or that whatever, right, insurance policy that you have while you are actually using Uber, doing Uber, is in effect.
Because you have to let the insurance company know what they're insuring, right?
That's right.
It's not just me and my kids. It's
Right.
me and some stranger that I don't know, and I'm going to be doing this a whole lot. I'm going to have lots and lots of strangers. I'm going to be on the road a whole lot. Your exposure is going to be a whole lot more, so they're allowed to charge you a little bit more for that, right?
Or at the very least,
Or to say, hey, I'm not going to insure you at all for that. Don't do it.
golly, excuse me. You caught me so by surprise. I nearly, anyways,
The geniusness.
the geniusness.
Like I
says-
was tapped into
That's
Chat
right.
GPT.
So what happens is, it turns out that corporations are people too,
yes.
right? There is a certain amount of, and you almost never hear this from me because I'm daily, like, I wouldn't say I'm fighting with insurance companies, but I am daily like at odds
Right.
about my clients' damages. But I'm I'm hardly at odds with insurance companies about coverage, which is a different issue, right? So what happened in this case is this lady, Molly, Annie Molly,
Okay.
under assumed name,
Right.
Right. She caused a wreck. And the person who got injured filed a claim under her insurance. The insurance company said, who are you?
We don't insure that person.
We don't insure that person.
Never heard of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Essentially. Maybe a little bit nuanced, but essentially what
I know you not. Depart from me.
what ends up happening is the insurance company says, look, we have this contract
Right.
to provide coverage for you if you injure somebody else. That contract is based on the facts being true.
Right. You are who you say you are. You don't have any wrecks. Right.
Right. Turns out you committed fraud
Right.
in saying that you were somebody else. You were impersonating somebody. The contract is void. We're not going to cover this.
Sure.
Right. So, and eventually what ends up happening is the Court of Appeals in Georgia agrees. The insurance company, because you committed fraud in your application, it nullifies the contract, right? In the kind of sense of fundamental fairness of, you know what, corporations are people too, right? The insurance company are people too. There's you have to deal with each other with
Right.
some sort of fairness. So that's what happened in that case. She had given fraudulent credentials, and
So just to clarify, they can still sue her individually, who she really is. They can figure that out, right?
right, that's right.
But there's no insurance to cover it because the insurance that she had obtained was obtained fraudulently. So the insurance company, even though she had a policy in place, is not required to cover this accident. Even
Right.
though now here's my problem. She's paid
The premiums.
into the insurance company for this coverage.
Yeah.
And now they're saying,
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
yeah, you lied to us.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's two parts of that. One, and we're going to talk about the second part a little bit later, but I want to mention it here. And that is, well, in the scheme of things, who's hurt by this?
The person that was injured.
The person who got injured, right? Like they're not even a
That's
party to
not
this
their
case.
fault the person lied to get their insurance
That's right.
in place.
We can talk about like what maybe the possible outcomes are that later.
And I think Uber for not vetting their drivers better to make sure these insurance policies are legit.
Yeah, you're right about that. Uber, what they're saying in essence in these cases is, look, we're just a platform, right? We're just a platform for people to connect drivers.
But you're not.
But you're not.
They're a corporation. They can be held criminally liable. They can go to jail. Somebody can.
Put the corporation in jail.
They're a person too. Like
they're people too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff is weird to me, and who gets stuck holding the bag is strange. But,
yeah,
they're a corporation, and they're people too, and there's a person behind that corporation that is responsible for the actions of that corporation.
there is a person who made that decision.
Right.
Right. That policy decision, whether it's a board member or it's a CEO or whatever, there's a person who made that decision. I keep going back with my clients about this in smaller situations where they're talking about something that happened at their job, and they say, well, they told me I had to blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I keep telling them, there's no they.
Right.
There's no such person as they. There's
Who
a
is
person.
the person?
A person said it. A person wrote it. Whatever. Who is that person? Because that's what I always want to know.
But they do that, though. They stand behind the veil of the corporation. Well, corporate told me.
That's our policy.
That's our policy, right?
You know what I do in that circumstance? They say,
my policy is you got to get down this hole and kill yourself. So get down there, right? You're
Right.
the dude telling them to get in the hole. You're responsible
Yeah.
for those decisions, even if it's the corporate policy. At some point, you got to say, hey, wait, this is dangerous. Or, hey, wait, this could kill somebody. Or, hey, wait, this is illegal.
Right.
You can't just, we're involved in a corporation. So they said load up the cocaine. I loaded up the cocaine,
I was just following orders. Right. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go back to that other piece, though.
Sure.
Right? Because what happened with this was that when the person asked for the Uber on the Uber app, Uber essentially selected the driver for them.
Right.
Right? I don't get to go on the Uber app and say, driver 4563 is around. I'm going to grab them.
Right.
I don't get to do that. Right?
He's 8 stars. He's driving a
Right. I don't
brand
get
new
to.
Escalade.
I don't get to
I'll
choose.
pick him.
That's right. But if I am the customer, I'm relying on Uber to send me somebody who is reliable.
Right. And even though it's just an app,
It's not just an app.
It's the same as like negligent hiring, like not doing your due diligence as a company, putting people in place that are going to harm other people. I mean, I do think Uber has a corporate responsibility to make sure their product is safe. And their product is, we're delivering a driver to you to take you from point A to point B.
A driver that's not going to kill you.
Right. And has insurance in case you do get hurt to cover
right.
you. Right.
Yeah. I wonder what happened with that, whether there's backup insurance or something. Because, that would be interesting. I'd like to do some more research in that.
I mean, the
find
crazy
out, what
thing
else
is, I got down this little rabbit hole about these wrapped contracts. They're like in the packages that you just fall out, and it's like you have agreed to these terms and blah, 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 and then the click contracts. The courts have upheld most of those things. Like basically you can just click and agree that, you're going to be part of the human centipede, and, you just, you're like, yes.
Yeah.
So I think Uber can possibly contract out of some of that by adding it to their disclosures or whatever they probably have.
Yeah, maybe that's true, but
nobody ever reads those things.
The way you're right that courts have found some of them to be enforceable. Right. The question is whether you and I agreed on a course of action. Right. And if I'm selling you a widget, and the widget comes in a wrapping, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, it's called a
and
cellophane contract or something. If it's wrapped in the cellophane, when it falls out on the table, you're presumed to have read it, understood it, and if you wanted to, put the stuff back in the box and send it back.
Sure, why not?
And if you didn't do that, then you've agreed to the contract.
Right. But there's a caveat to that, though, right? There's a thing, there's a proviso, there's an extra thing to it.
Right.
Right. Courts have also stated and held that we're not going to enforce a policy, a provision that's in that contract that would be unexpected.
Sure.
Right. Like, I mean, we're going to enforce parts of those contracts, especially if they're in those circumstances that like a normal.
Like the South Park human centipede.
I don't even know the reference. Sorry, I lost it.
When you clicked on the app for the cell phone, you agreed to have your lips surgically put on somebody else's anus.
Oh my God!
To make a
Would you
human centipede.
stop? For the love of God, stop! All right. Anyways,
Just saying.
So
It's a great episode.
That's the kind of thing. Like courts would say, well, if provision
And the court said they had to do it.
They had to do
didn't
it,
have a
yeah.
choice.
that absurd.
Right.
Provision 1 is, look, we disclaim any warranties, blah, 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 blah,
Sure.
blah, right. And then provision 2 is you agree to give up your firstborn child, like, and they're trying to enforce that, like, the court's going to say,
This product will explode and kill you.
Right.
If product explodes and kills you, you cannot sue.
You
us.
cannot sue.
Right.
Yeah, right. That kind of stuff.
My first razor blade.
Do you remember that old Saturday Night Live one for Happy Fun Ball?
Yeah.
Happy Fun Ball is like, it's radioactive,
Right.
don't touch it, not meant to be played with, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's Happy Fun Ball.
Yeah, I
Right,
like it.
exactly. So now, that being said, right, you do have to worry about this tendency to be sued for every kind of circumstance, right?
Sure.
Like I bought a Rubik's Cube. The Rubik's Cube, I left it on the floor and I tripped and I fell and my head hit it and it got broken and my head got caved in by one of the corners.
That we talked about in the other episode about the child drowning at Margaritaville.
Right.
You didn't like that. You didn't think the corporation should be responsible for that. I thought the corporation should be. You're like, hey, parents, watch your kids. And I'm like, hey, corporation, put a lifeguard out there.
In that circumstance, it just based on reading the facts of that, it appeared to me that the mother was not paying attention to her 4-year-old child who was apparently under the surface of the water for a full 10, 15 minutes.
And it appears to me that Margaritaville makes a bunch of money and could have put a lifeguard out there.
True, but like the whole point is in Georgia we have comparative negligence, right? Like I just can't imagine a circumstance where a jury would say, "Oh yeah, Margaritaville is at
100%,
least
right.
51% responsible is mom," right? Anyways, back to this. Corporations are people too,
Yes.
Wayne. Some of my closest friends are corporations. Did I tell you?
I don't think that people with small businesses realize when they cross over to this point and they realize, hey guys, you need a lawyer now, right? I mean, because they're worried about selling contracts and mowing lawns and doing whatever.
I'm just trying to
keep
the
make
bills
a business,
paid.
right?
That's right.
And there's a point where you go from just being a small business to now you're making enough money that you really need to start looking at the legalities of things, sitting down and talking to a lawyer and figuring those things out, because you are a person too. Your corporation is a person too.
That's right.
You can get yourself in civil trouble. You can get yourself in criminal trouble.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you're protecting yourself.
Yeah. Now I represent some businesses in that circumstance.
God
like
bless you.
Small businesses, people who are like building, like these guys are busting it, trying to build a company that can be sustained and can sustain itself, right? I struggle when I talk to potential clients because I don't want to sound like the doomsday guy who's selling you like death insurance or life insurance or whatever, but just look at the news, at the kinds of things.
Well, if he's running a business, the last thing he wants is another expense. Now I got to pay for a lawyer.
Now I got to pay for. You got to pay.
Yeah, but if you don't,
Right.
and you don't have that lawyer looking at it through the set of law eyes, then you get in a situation where now you got to pay $16 million because you didn't have a part-time lifeguard there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Like,
right?
The issue also boils down to accessibility.
Sure.
In the sense that if you're a small business, this is what I found in talking to my small business clients, or small to medium. I don't really know if you're making millions of dollars whether you're still small, but whatever the case, I think the Small Business Association has like an official definition, but whatever.
Not publicly traded corporations.
Yes, yeah. That's right. Closely held corporations. Like it's like me and Jim, my neighbor.
Right.
We built this thing, right, or whatever. One, you don't really know what kind of lawyer to look for.
Right.
Right. And two, the problem is that the lawyers who are really smart and do represent like Coca-Cola or represent, whatever.
Or making $2,000 an hour.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I mean, we found that there's a necessary market for people just like, I need to know what I need to know. And like, I don't want to have a conversation with a lawyer and one, not understand what the heck he's talking about. And two, after not having understood what he's talking about, be presented with a $2,000, $3,000 bill. Right.
Well, that's the problem is you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
Right. You don't know what those problems are. You don't know what those pitfalls are. You really, need to reach out to somebody like you and say, hey, just kind of walk me through it, man, so I don't step in the big stinky. Right.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of the advice is also just kind of like not really legal advice. It's tax advice. To just talking about like what does your business need to be doing. I think a lot of the misinformation out there is about LLCs, about corporations,
right?
Because it's hard.
There's a lot of bad information.
There's a lot of terrible information, right? Like, what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. You need to take this piece of furniture and you need to put it in the name of LLC ABC. Right. Then you need to create another LLC called XYZ, and you need to put your other car in it. Then you need to put this and this LLC. I'm like, what are you doing?
Tax fraud.
You need to set it. You need to set it up in Wyoming.
That's right.
And then have it owned by a corporation in Nevada. And that way you're completely that's
it's like
not gonna,
sovereign citizens giving criminal advice. You're like, stop doing that.
They say, listen. Let me tell you about what the Constitution says about taxes.
We're under maritime law.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're going to get arrested.
All I know is there are two inevitable things in life.
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes. So at any rate.
So guys, if you have a problem with something like that, call Bob. He'll help you out.
I at least want to talk to you.
Yeah.
I don't charge anything to talk to you.
Very interesting, though.
Yeah. I find it very satisfying as an other part of my practice. The primary part of my practice.
So you don't just sue people? You help people not get sued?
I help people that have gotten sued, actually. Well, I have a friend who...
So you're like the secret weapon, man.
He owns a flooring business, and he got sued by his customer.
And he's like, how do we not do this again?
How do we not do this? That's why I kind of developed this other part of my practice, is because I would have my friends who would they'd get sued by somebody.
Right. And
what I should have done is that, that old saw about when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago.
That's right.
Right. What I found was, man, I should have been talking to this guy 10 years ago, 5 years ago, before he started doing these stupid things. Right. Like anyways, I can't get into too much detail.
Now, for my small business clients, I cannot give you advice because selling drugs is still illegal in the state of Georgia.
Surely your clients aren't selling them.
But if we legalize marijuana, we'll figure you out a little game plan.
Right. Yeah, so have you been paying, speaking of that, and corporations and marijuana, have you been following, like, what is the latest now about, like, is it moving in the direction of more liberalization, or is there a backlash from?
We're headed that way. We definitely see some movement towards legalization on the federal side of things, as far as they made a little bit of movement about banking, because before they couldn't use banks.
Right. You have to put all your cash.
Yeah. And your employees have to come, and you have to write them a check, and then they got to come to you, and you got to pay them. You got to cash the check and all this crazy stuff.
I didn't know any of this.
No. And then they were intercepting people on the highway, taking the cash.
With barrelfuls of cash.
Right, and it's just nuts because these were in states that had legalized marijuana. Georgia's still got a very strong pushback on it. I mean, a lot of places won't prosecute misdemeanor amounts of marijuana anymore. But then we have places like Cherokee County that even a misdemeanor amount, they'll still send it off to a private crime lab that they pay for out of pocket.
To a corporation?
Yeah, to a corporation to get that test result back, because, the GBI quit testing it.
Right.
And if you don't have a test, you obviously don't have a case. So we're definitely moving in that direction towards legalization, but we still got a long way to go. And so many people in Georgia think it is legal. I can't tell you how many of my clients are like, I was honest with him. I told him I'd smoked weed, and it was right there in the center console. I'm like, still not legal.
Still not legal. So this is our public announcement for the day.
It's still not legal.
And marijuana is still not legal.
It's almost legal, but not quite.
Not quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, because that Georgia hemp farming bill really kind of changed everything, but they're figuring out ways to get around that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's been the news. Do you want to take on a question from a 10-year-old?
Sure.
Time for questions from a 10-year-old.
Why did they arrest Donald Trump?
We're not covering that. All right. Well, thank you. This is all
man,
we're
let's
going to say
hear
about
your-
this.
Let's
Now,
hear your opinion.
thank you for joining our episode. Please make sure that you subscribe so you can hear more entertaining anecdotes.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time when Bob and Irreverent D talk law.